Bonjour, French one. Today's lesson is all about taking all of those describing words we've been talking about in this section so far and actually putting them into complete sentences, both so that somebody can ask you what somebody is like and you can describe them in a complete sentence and say things like he is tall and dark and handsome, or so that you can give your opinion of somebody else. So if somebody says, well, what is somebody so-and-so like? You can say, well, he's really mean, or whatever it might be. So the first thing we're going to talk about is asking about and describing people in full sentences. And there's a couple different ways of going about that. You can either use the word como at the beginning of the sentence and say things like como es. And then the reason why there's a blank there is because you have to fill in the person's name or however you're describing. So como es Madame D? What is Madame D like? You could also say she is how, which I know makes no sense at all, but that's literally what this comes down to. It's in a different word order. If it's asking the exact same question, you could instead say elle est comment, Madame D? You'd literally be saying she is how, as in what is she like, that Mrs. D, but it's just a different way of doing it. If you're asking about more than one person and you want to ask what are they like, you have to change the verb a little bit. And we'll actually learn this verb. It's called the verb être. But really these are the same sentences except the verb looks different because on these two you're asking what are these people, plural, like, versus on these first two it's just what is this one person like. So if you wanted to ask about what are teachers like, comment sont les professeurs? Or you could say ils sont comment les professeurs, which would mean what are those teachers like? So just two different orders, two different ways of asking, and also two different ways of asking based on whether you're talking about one person or multiple people. When you go to answer, you'll want to say he or she is, which is either il est très or elle est. Il est and elle est just mean he is or she is. If you add the word très, you can use the word very, but you got to fill in something after it. There's a ... So you could say, if somebody says, comment est Madame D? Elle est très gentille. She's very nice. If somebody asked about the teachers and what are they like, again, you'll notice the verb change here. The word assez is kind of like kinda. So if you want to say something like, well, comment sont les professeurs? What are those teachers like? Ils sont assez méchants. They're kind of mean. And then they give you one other option here. If you want to say that somebody is in between, I know we learned some extremes here in this class. We learned tall and we learned short, but we didn't learn average height. If you want to say that somebody is in between two different things, then you say that they are ni one thing and ni the other, meaning they are neither that nor that. So if you wanted to describe somebody that's of average height, a boy that's of average height, you would say il n'est ni grand ni petit. He is neither tall nor short. And that would be how you get some of those in-between kind of gradients. So just to give you some quick examples, you're actually going to see some pictures of my kids, and they're a little over a year old, but that's okay. They're still cute. So I kind of wanted to show you this so you could get a good idea of how you could use these things in full-on sentences and give you some examples. So this is my son, Nevin. If somebody were to say, comment est le garçon? They'd be asking, what is the boy like? Or il est comment? What is he like? So if you want to describe him, you could say things like, il est mignon. Oop, here, hang on a second. What else is Nevin? Il est petit. Now, one thing I do need you to notice whenever I'm writing these, and you don't have to write these on your notes if you don't want to, is that I'm using the masculine form of these describing words to describe him. If you want to write down these to the question and the answer as an example, that's a fine thing to do, but you don't have to. Now, on the flip side, if I wanted to describe my daughter, you'd have to first of all ask, what is the girl like, or what is she like? Como est la fille, or elle est comment? If I wanted to talk about what Hannah is like, I would have to make sure that I was using the feminine form of those describing words. So when I say things like elle est intelligente, I add that E there to make sure that I'm using the feminine form of smart. And elle est brune, she is dark-haired, as in brunette. Okay, again, both feminine forms. At this point in time, I know you can't tell from the picture, but elle n'est ni grande and ni petite. She is neither tall nor short. She's somewhere in between. So again, you don't have to write this down, but it's an option. If you wanted to describe both kids at once, you would have to ask, what are the kids like, or what are they like? Comment sont les enfants, or ils sont comment? And then when you go to describe them, you'd have to use the plural forms of describing words. So I would describe them as being very mignon, very cute. I would also describe them as sometimes being pénible. Because every now and then, you know how kids are, they get annoying, and plus it's a fun word to use. But again, notice that I'm adding the S to both of those because I'm describing multiple people. So that just gives you an idea of how that works. If by chance somebody asks you your opinion of somebody else, this is how you would do that. If you want to ask what your opinion is, not just what are they like and give me like the factual details, but what do you think of this person? Two different ways of asking that. Comment tu trouves? Again, there's a ... that you have to put in who you're asking about. Comment tu trouves, Madame D? What do you think of Mrs. D? Or qu'est-ce que tu penses de Madame D? Again, both mean the exact same thing. This one literally means how do you find, as in how do you find Miss D to be? Do you find her to be quite boring? This one literally says what do you think of, and then you have to fill that in. But in English, we can just basically say what do you think of for both of them. When you go to answer, depending on whether you're describing a boy or a girl, you're either going to use le or la. So if you were describing a boy, like, I don't know, qu'est-ce que tu penses de Bob? You would say something like, je le trouve beau. I think he's handsome. If you were, of course, just like my example down here, asking about me, you would ask, comment tu trouves Madame D? And you could say something lovely like, je la trouve belle, which would mean I think she's beautiful. If you would like to preface any of these sentences or phrases with the phrase à mon avis just means in my opinion. It's like saying, hey, this is a judgment call. Things like tall and short and things like that are pretty straightforward. But when it comes to things like beauty or how nice somebody is, a lot of times you'll want to preface your sentence by saying, well, this is just my opinion, but à mon avis, je la trouve méchante. In my opinion, I think she's mean. So go ahead and make sure that you use that if you're prefacing a sentence that is really more of an opinion and less of a fact. Definitely write down any questions if you have them and bring these notes back with you to class.